everybody. Welcome to the Sharon and Joe Show. My name is Sharon.
My name is Joe.
Every Monday, Joe and I get together to discuss narcissism from both a male and a female perspective. As many of you know, we're in a long-distance relationship, so we usually communicate through text, email, and phone. Once a week, we hit the record button and include you in on our conversation, so all of us can share our experience, strength, and hope together. I also release videos on Wednesday and Fridays on topics related to narcissism. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. We would really appreciate it if you gave the video a thumbs up. It's a free way you can help us out. And definitely don't forget to leave a comment because we want to hear what you have to say. So Joe and I were talking earlier about what topic we wanted to discuss today. And we decided to go with the pinnacle of recovery, the do or die, the turning point, the state of mind called cognitive dissonance.
Yep, and it's do or die for sure. We were talking to you guys a little bit earlier, and I was telling Sharon, like, the longest part of my recovery was, accepting the fact that what I was dealing with, I don't even consider really a person, and I was sharing with Sharon, and she had mentioned that term, it sounds like cognitive dissonance. So maybe, Sharon, to start off, for people that may not know, why don't you read what cognitive dissonance is? What's the definition?
Yeah, sure. Cognitive dissonance is just a fancy term, meaning you hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. So love and hate. And this is what we go through when we're dealing with recovery from narcissistic abuse, because at some point you recognize that everything that you knew or a lot that you knew was a lie. So Joe, why don't you get the ball rolling for us and tell us what belief you had about your marriage until you found out the truth?
Sure, and we'll keep it simple, Sharon, so that way we can get to the meat and potatoes of that gray area of actually the process of getting through this. So in a nutshell, the last 20 years of my marriage, which I call marriage, when I first met my ex, it was a person that I thought shared the same values and beliefs. We had children. We moved out to a nice city to get to a good school system for the kids, somebody that honored and respected me the same way that I did to her. It was just, she made a lot of mistakes, man, and I get that gut instinct, but, I'm human, we all make mistakes, and there's a lot of peculiar things that were happening here and there, but, I was a husband, I wanted to be a father, and although I fell short a lot of times just being human, trying to be the best dad and the best husband, but, I did my damnedest to do that. So that's what I thought of her, for the majority of our relationship. I call it entanglement. How about you?
Yeah, kind of a similar story on my end. So I was married to somebody for around the same amount of time as you, and I believed that he was trying to be a good husband, that he was a devoted father. I believed these things. That's the most crucial thing to say. And you as well. You're believing these things. So I thought that, he wanted the same things that I did. I thought he wanted to, he was career orientated. He wanted me to stay home with the kids. He wanted me to homeschool the kids, that was going to be our lifestyle. We had a nice house, the white picket fence, the whole 9 yards. I believe that was the lifestyle that he wanted just as much as me. So Joe, since I'm referring to these people as our exes now, obviously something went wrong. How do you view your ex today?
That was then, this is now. I look back and I basically, in a nutshell, I dodged a bullet. I tell you that it's life or death, and the farther away I keep coming, or the farther away I keep moving from that web of deceit, the further I do truly understand it was life or death. I was dealing with Dr. Robert Hare. He calls them intraspecies predators. I was dealing with a narcissist on the higher end that had antisocial personality disorder. What I thought were mistakes were very, it was all false. I don't know how else to tell you. She wasn't honest. She wasn't a good wife. She did things to intentionally hurt me. Cheated, lied, stole. I was dealing with an actress in a narcissist of the worst kind, the malignant narcissist. How about you? What's it like today for you?
Oh, it couldn't be more different than the image that I had. I mean, that's really what it was. I had an image in my mind of what I was living, but the reality couldn't have been further from the truth. Now I know that he's a liar. He stole money from our children. He was drinking. He was an alcoholic. He was driving drunk with the kids. I'm thinking he's this great husband and father. But the truth was that, like I said, he's driving drunk with the kids. He's stealing money from the kids. He's giving me silent treatments for lengthy periods of time. He was a nightmare. The reality today with my eyes open. And of course, I would see flashes of this. Or actually, I saw all of it because I knew it was happening. But I kept making up excuses. Well, he doesn't know how to communicate very well, or he's having a rough time, or this, or that. And that's what we do because we want something so badly that we cling on to like any source of reality. Well, maybe this, maybe that. So Joe, there we have the two opposites, right? So we have like what we thought, what we know. But what about the middle part? That's the hard part. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, as you mentioned it, there's a saying, denial is not just a river in Egypt. Pain, suffering, all of it led to finally acceptance. How the hell do you account for that? Like, what I thought was real wasn't real. That's terrifying. It was terrifying for me. It was like, and then it was just, oh, Sharon, only somebody that's been through it understands that I don't have all the words to say. I mean, you got the trauma bond, and coming off the reminiscence of the trauma bond, coming off of betrayal and the emotions, to even when I started thinking logically, like, you can only see it on somebody for so many times, and finally, like, there's no emotional attachment. Trying to logically grasp my arms around what the hell I just experienced, that what I thought was real is not real. There's a process involved. I'll just keep it at that for now. Like, on the outside, the external, everything was just reverse polarity, just a inversion of nature. I don't know how else to describe it. What was it like for you?
Well, you know what? I'll just say, we were talking earlier, a good way to explain this to especially somebody who hasn't experienced it, because anyone who's experienced it, you know what we're talking about. Your whole life is a lie. I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you accept that? It's crazy. This doesn't happen to people. This is like on a soap opera or something. But a good way to explain this to other people is, imagine so I tell Joe I'm pregnant. Now I'm not really pregnant. I'm aware that I'm not pregnant. But for whatever reason, I've decided I'm going to mess with him and I'm going to tell him I'm pregnant. I know he wants me to be pregnant. I'm going to tell him I'm pregnant. He's so excited. So, Joe and I are shopping for the baby that doesn't exist. I tell Joe, can you paint the nursery this weekend? Joe, I'm hungry. Can you get me some food? Joe, can you rub my feet? Joe, my back's bothering me. So I'm taking full advantage of this. And Joe's so excited. Joe, what would you do if I told you I was pregnant and you believed I'm pregnant?
Oh, I'd be buying the crib. I'd be putting the crib together. I'd be buying all kinds of toys, maybe even get a little puppy so that they could grow up together. I'd be especially like taking super, super, super care of you. I wouldn't, I would accept the fact that, okay, well, maybe she wants the ultrasound, like she doesn't want me to go or whatever, but this gives me time to do the crib and make her dinner when she comes home. I'd be ecstatic. It's like what I always wanted.
And here I am, Now I know, keep this in mind with the narcissist. The narcissist knows what they're doing. Sometimes we believe that they must not know, or they wouldn't lie to me on purpose. They're lying to you on purpose. So here I am, and now, so Joe's doing all this stuff for me, all this stuff for the baby that he believes is real. We're talking about baby names. And then, it starts getting close to the due date. And at some point, something's going to have to give. So however Joe finds out, I'd probably tell him, but it would probably what a narcissist would do is cry hysterically. Joe comes home from a long day at work. I'm not working because, I'm pregnant. So here I am, I'm crying hysterically. Joe comes in, oh my gosh, honey, what's wrong? And then I have to tell him that I actually am not pregnant. But I don't want Joe to be mad at me. That's not how narcissism works. I have to somehow blame Joe. So I would tell him that oh, Joe, you know what? I couldn't tell you because you were so excited about the baby and I had to keep this all to myself all this time. And it was so horrible for me. And, it was all about me. And then meanwhile, Joe, how are you feeling?
Oh my God. I'm in shock. I'm upset. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm concerned that maybe there's something mentally wrong with you. But then, I come to you, I start beating myself up. You dummy, why didn't you see she didn't gain a pound for the last 9 months? How could you be so stupid? And I come to you trying to find answers to make sense. You're gaslighting the hell out of me. And before I know it, I'd be telling myself, Joe, don't be so selfish. She did it because she knew how much you wanted to have a child, and she didn't know how to tell you the truth. And, maybe and after I got angry, then I would feel bad because I yelled. And then I'd be apologizing for you for yelling, totally forgetting what the hell happened in the first place.
Yes.
It's and then how the hell do I tell anybody about it? Okay, guys, I tell my friend, okay, this happened, but it really didn't. Meaning, I took action based on a lie. I bought the crib. I spent hours with it. I painted the room. I got all kinds of toys. I threw away the receipts. I got this little puppy. But she wasn't pregnant. So it happened, but it didn't happen. And I'm trying to come to terms with that in my own damn head. I'd be quietly going insane, trying to rationalize what the hell just happened and who am I with.
And
what happened in the past? If she lied to me about the baby, did she lie to me about this? It would just be a chaos.
And then, and when it comes to a narcissist, they have such nerve. Maybe a narcissist would do that again. You know what I mean? They don't stop. They just keep going. You said to me earlier, Joe, when we were talking about this, you're like, I bet they're thinking that we're so stupid. When are they going to realize what I'm doing? And I think to a degree, I don't know if it's that or if they literally are so high on themselves. They really believe that they can get away with anything. They can say anything because they're so wonderful in every way that, us, people that are so under them will never catch on, and they can live this way their entire life.
Both. If you're a forgiving human being and you forgive and then you do it again, then it's your fault. That's how these creatures operate, I guess. And that's the one part of the journey, this cognitive dissonance, going to acceptance. So I got this topsy-turvy world, and I'm trying to kind of understand this. I'm trying to reverse it back into the right polarity. Then, not only am I questioning the external, I'm questioning the internal in me. I started asking myself questions. This is where the recovery process kind of catapulted. I began to unwind this web. When I started asking myself tough questions, could you imagine any healthy person being in a relationship with one of these things for any substantial period of time? The first time they cheated, the first time they stole from you, the first time they emotionally abused you or gaslit you, they'd be out. So that question there was just no healthy person would. So I came to understand that maybe I wasn't all that healthy. Then I had this belief system inside of me that if I call you a friend, if I tell you that I love you, I mean it. I'm not a saint, but I'm a decent human being. So here I was with, I call them artificial emotions. I believed that I loved her. I was in love with her. I believed that I loved her, but how can I justify that? Because at this point in time, I didn't trust her. I didn't believe her. She was worse than my youngest son. I don't associate with people like that, let alone have them be my friends, and then to say that I even love them. So I was lying to myself too. So you got this thing lying to me, I'm lying to myself, and I started to just detach emotionally and looking at it logically. All right, so here's what happened. This really did happen.
Now, Joe, did this happen when you started feeling this way? Was this when you had already split with her, or did this happen when you were still with her?
Well, the recovery process started when I was still with her. This gives some people some hope too, that are still in it, that you still can learn about narcissism. So by the 17th year and the umpteenth time she lied, stole, or cheated from me, by that time I started researching symptoms for symptoms. Now, she's a drug addict, and she would have a few years of sobriety, then be off. I think the longest she had was 7. We've been for 20 years. So being in recovery myself from drugs and alcohol, I thought it was just that. But there was other things too, Sharon. So around the 17th year I was married, I started researching the symptoms, and that's when it all pointed to, anti-personality disorder like narcissism.
Had you heard of that? Had you heard of that before? Narcissism?
No. I've heard it said before, like, they're a narcissist, but I didn't know about NPD, like personality disorder. So I thought maybe she was maybe bipolar or like depressed. Like it never connected the dots. This is a malevolent predator, like that is actively lying, conning, cheating on me with no empathy towards me or her children. You see, narcissists, a lot of times, I believe, feelings are facts. So when I have her telling my kids, our children, that I hear her say, I love you, but she's been gone for a year and a half and hasn't contributed 1 penny to these kids. As a matter of fact, had stole from me while she's been away. In her mind, she loves them because that's how she feels. In reality, it is just a very, very warped sense. So I guess, if that answers your question, about 17 years in the marriage, I started researching the symptoms. But to do the shadow work, what I mean is questioning myself and looking at things objectively. That was after I went no contact, and I began to do the work.
Yeah, the work is the answer, because it's horrible. I mean, it's so painful when you're going through we call this the gray area, the area where you're experiencing the cognitive dissonance, because you have to accept that something you didn't even know existed was actually your life all along. I mean, how do you do that? It takes a lot of time. But once you start doing that, you're right, Joe, looking at yourself, because I had to do that too. All of a sudden, here I am, I'm living this life. I mean, it really is like as if I went, left my house, walked down the street, grabbed some random guy off the street and brought him home and pretended, now he's my husband. I don't know him, but he's my husband now, and he's raising my kids and he's doing all this stuff. That's how it is. You recognize you don't know this person. You're literally living with a stranger. And that's a terrifying reality. It's horrible because these people, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it is, when I began to question myself and I saw my codependency, I saw my low self-worth, my low self-esteem, ironically, many traits kind of like a narcissist, although I do have a personality. I'm not trying to compare myself to them or anybody. But when I started to look at those things that I could change in me, accepting the fact that I couldn't change them, for me, I was beyond human aid. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I began to build this relationship with my true self. And I began to trust and have faith in a power greater than myself, a power I call Jesus. For other people, whatever they want to call it, is theirs. And, but, I didn't mean to interrupt at all. I just wanted to make sure, this wasn't something I did by myself. And I wanted to clarify that shadow work, the inner work, asking yourself questions, see your own holes and why you chose to ignore red flags is vital for recovery. Because one of the comments last week, it hurt me because I could totally understand. I was there where somebody said, yeah, I got away from the narcissist. I'll never trust anybody again. For me, when I began to trust myself, to know that my gut instinct, that's my true self, and to vow not to ever, ignore red flags again, I wasn't looking for a relationship or to be with anybody. But because I didn't say I'm never, ever in this lifetime going to be with or trust another human being again, I'd only be hurting myself. I never would have found you. But I wanted to bring that up because it kind of, what do you think about that? Were you at a point one time where you're just I don't think I'm ever going to trust anybody again? It was like that for me for a time.
Yeah, I think for everybody, because when I was, literally in a tailspin, I didn't know what was up, what was down, because my whole life was it was crazy. It was like a tornado was my life, and I was just trying to keep my feet on the ground. So at that point, yeah, certainly wasn't thinking about a relationship. And yeah, when it comes to trust, I basically had the attitude, trust no one. I mean, that's really how I felt. I trust my kids. That's it. When you're hurt, that's how you live your life. But as I did the inner work, like you were saying, once I started really understanding who I was as a person, because even that, it just, in some ways it's so strange with narcissism, because it's such a terrible thing to have happen to somebody, to be involved with a narcissist. But at the same time, if you do the inner work, you really can become the best version of yourself. I've found that to be true in my experience, and also with Joe and with other people. But the work is painful. But when you do the work, when you recognize, why was I with somebody like this? I mean, my ex abused me. I mean, he physically assaulted me at the beginning of our relationship, and I stayed with him. Why would I do that? And it's not like my fault, but I have to ask myself these questions, because I wasn't where I should have been. And there's a whole litany of, answers I have for that. But what it comes down to is, once I was able to do the work, and once I was able to identify things about myself, I feel free. I feel freer than I have. And I wasn't looking for a relationship. So that is a factor. I don't know what would have happened if I was looking for a relationship. I guess it depends when I was looking for the relationship. But I wasn't looking for a relationship. But Joe and I were both so happy one day when we recognized, you know what? Because we had already been past the trust part of the relationship. And we just happened to mention to each other, wow, why do we trust each other? Shouldn't we not trust anybody? And it was a good feeling. I felt like I was at a good point in my life where I was able to be authentic with somebody else, but not be so afraid that I'd be hurt, that I wasn't able to enjoy my life. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, honey, it's just, when you learn to trust yourself, then, I adopted a new attitude and outlook on life, where pain for me was necessary. It was a catalyst for growth. But having an open mind and learning to accept my own shortcomings and defects of character, I adopted a new set of principles where now love's a motivator for me, and it's it's a love of myself, loving myself first, not in a selfish way to make it sound, but in a very holistic, healthy way of honoring and loving myself first. Because when you do, then you can truly love somebody else. How can you love somebody if you truly don't love yourself? And I obviously wasn't the best version of myself until after this was over,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's really important. Now, this has helped me a lot, to recognize what you do have, because there's a lot of loss involved with narcissism. I mean, just time itself. I mean, Joe and I lost 20 years. I mean, we can never get that time back. And time really is one of the most valuable things. It's also painful for me to recognize that my kids are almost grown, and the dreams that I had for them for their childhood, they're gone with the narcissism. I don't get to do the things I really wanted to do with my kids. There were certain things that were important to me to do, and now I can't do them. But I really look at it like I have two choices. I can either bemoan my fate and literally look back all the time and constantly obsess over it, constantly be angry and just unable to forgive it. And then, here's my ex living rent-free in my brain all day long, and I can't enjoy anything in my life today. I'm grateful that I'm free, that I'm able to live another life, that I can start over. And it's been my greatest joy to find Joe. But, that isn't the end point. The end point should be yourself. Not in a vain way, but that so you are able to be real and have boundaries and recognize things that went wrong in the relationship, why that happened. Because my experience really is that there's a beautiful life out there for everybody. Narcissism doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. There's so much more to enjoy. It's painful, though, to go through the recovery. It really is. You're living in an alternative universe. It's like somebody picked you up and put you in someone else's home, and you don't know what the heck's going on. But once you accept that and you don't obsess over it, life can be beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Sam. There was a good way to end a good note to end it on. And that gratitude, it takes work to get there. But as I said before, you know, sometimes it will happen quickly and sometimes slowly, but it will materialize if you work for it.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to let it take a little time. I know everybody always wants everything to, you know, end right away, and that's just not how life is. But if you just use Joe and I as an example, we both got through it. And, you know, it's still sometimes, even now, every once in a while, it'll kind of like pass through my brain. And what, did that really happen? You know, how could this have happened? And you kind of feel bad about it for a little bit. But if you just keep looking at what you have now, because imagine if you're still with a narcissist, and if you are with a narcissist, just, you know, keep in mind that there is another life out here, even though it seems scary and intimidating. But I guess that's not the scope of today's video. Today's video is cognitive dissonance, and that, yeah, it's horrible. It's a shock. It'll blow your mind, but it doesn't have to be permanent. So, Joe, what do you think about a video for next week?
I'm kind of balancing on maybe we could talk about the dark triad, because not everybody was in entanglements with, you know, narcissists, you know, psychopaths. But, you know, maybe we could do something on that, because that was my experience. Or maybe like something to do with spirituality versus religion and recovery. You know, there's a saying that people that are afraid to go to hell, like religion is for people that are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for people that have been there. Maybe that, or let's just see what the listeners have to say. If anybody has any kind of topic or anything, we're always glad to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to get you guys involved. That's why we're making these videos, right? Because Joe and I will just talk to ourselves just fine. But if there's anything that you are interested in us doing a video on, please let us know. We love to hear from you. Appreciate the comments and the support. You guys are really awesome, and we really, really appreciate it. So I guess that's it for now. I will be back on Wednesday by myself, sadly. And Joe, you'll be back next week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. God willing, I'm going to show up. I love doing it.
All right, awesome then. Then we will see Joe with us next week. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye, guys.